Hi guys, it's Dylan from Bijou Diamond Jewellery in London again with another watch review, and today we are looking at the Rolex Yachtmaster. As with all my reviews, I like to start with the history. So let's skip back now to the early 90s, where Rolex was looking to redesign the Submariner, which had been out since the 50s. They wanted to revamp the Submariner and make it look new and slightly different to the original one, which had pretty much stayed the same for 40 years. They made the new design a bit more sleeker, some rounded edges, and also much more polished on the case as well, versus the more sort of angular and brushed look and very like utilitarian or quite tall look that the Submariner had, the original Submariner. They also wanted to make the Submariner in precious metals as well. They basically wanted to offer the market or Rolex buyers the option to buy a precious or a more luxury version of the Submariner. But when they redesigned the watch and they had a look at what they'd created, they realized they changed the watch so much, even though the essence of the Submariner was still there and it still looked very similar in a way, that they realized that it was too different for them to still call it the Submariner. They were scared that people who loved the Submariner and were kind of obsessed with it weren't going to receive this new revamped version or new remodeled version. So instead of calling it the Submariner, they didn't want to put the design to waste because they really liked what they created. So they took an old patent they'd secured from years and years ago, which was called the Yachtmaster. They called the new revamped Submariner the Yachtmaster. They knew they had to keep it within that sort of nautical theme because it looked like a dive watch and it had that dive bezel. So that's why they went for Yachtmaster. So in 1992, they released the Yachtmaster at Basel, and the watch they released was the reference 16628, and that was the first Yachtmaster, and that was available only in full yellow gold with a yellow gold bezel. So very different to the Submariners where they had sort of the aluminium bezels and the ceramic bezels. And the watch also featured a white dial. Again, quite a common Rolex thing to do, yellow gold with white dial. The watch featured their triple lock crown, but it had less water resistance than the standard Submariner. It actually only had 100 meters water resistance versus the 300 we see on the Submariner. But then I think probably Rolex's thinking behind that was this was a precious metal watch. It's meant to be the luxury version of the Submariner, not specifically designed to be a diving tool like the Submariner is. The watch was pretty much identical in terms of size and case diameter. It's 39.5mm diameter. The bezel was very similar, not quite as obvious and readable as the Submariner ones. The dial was extremely similar also to the Submariner, had slightly thinner hands and also slightly smaller markers. Or index markers rather than the big maxi ones we see on the Submariner. So the watch in general was pretty similar, but it was just a more luxurious version of the Submariner. In 1999, Rolex released the Rolesium edition of the Yachtmaster, which was a combination of steel case and platinum bezel. And that's something they still do today as well. And that's specifically the one that we're looking at today. If we skip now to 2007, Rolex released the Yachtmaster 2, and that featured a 44mm case size, so much larger than the original Yachtmaster 1. And that watch was designed to count down the first 10 minutes of a regatta race that you get to prepare your yacht. If you haven't seen my review of that already, then go check that out. Now we know the history behind the Yachtmaster, let's have a look at this specific Yachtmaster and the features of this watch. So the clasp on this watch is a standard oyster clasp. Again, really solid. As I always say, they're great clasps. They don't really wear out over time. This is not a glide lock clasp like we see on the Submariner, so it hasn't got that useful feature for wearing with a dive suit. This watch is generally geared towards a sort of more everyday wearable watch that's not specifically designed for diving. The bracelet is the standard oyster bracelet with brushed outer links and polished center links. It's the same bracelet as the GMT Master and also Daytona and a few other watches. Different to the Submariner because the Submariner features only brushed links on the steel versions. Moving now up onto the case, we have a full polished case, so that's completely different to the Submariner. The Submariner has brushed top half of the case and then polished sides with that smaller clasp, the oyster clasp, non-glide lock, your polished center links and the full polished case. It does have that appearance of much more of a high-end, more shiny, more glamorous more luxurious watch than the Submariner. The Submariner is very much a tool, and this is much more of an elegant looking piece. The depth also doesn't seem to be the same as the Submariner. The lugs also bend downwards into the wrist, creating a smaller profile and not quite as much throw out like we see on the Submariner. Again, creating a smaller presence to the wrist, which is more dressy. The case is actually also much more rounded. On the Submariners, we have ceramic bezels, whereas this, we have a full platinum bezel that is sandblasted, and then these numbers are raised and those are polished. That sandblasted effect is really cool. It just adds another sort of tone and finish to the watch. It complements the brushed outer links on the bracelet. It's also not a unidirectional bezel like we see on the Submariner. This bezel can move both directions. So in that respect, the Submariner is probably a better dive watch and a more safer dive watch, because the reason they use a unidirectional bezel is so that you don't accidentally add on minutes to your dive, therefore meaning you basically would run out of air. The dial on this watch features those nice maxi markers, the indexes. I really like them. The hand, again, really nice, elegant. This one I really like, the rhodium dial. That really cool deep grey dial that changes colour in different light. It's got that CD effect that I talk about on the day-date reviews that I've done. That kind of brushed inwards effect is a really nice looking dial. The blue hand, the blue seconds hand, and then the Yachtmaster writing is such a nice colour. That's sort of reminiscent of a Mediterranean Sea. It's almost like a small little recognition that this watch is designed for nautical activities. Would I own this watch? Definitely. I think it's one of the nicest watches in Rolex's range. I personally prefer the Submariner because it's truer to Rolex's history. I prefer the bezel on the Submariner. I prefer the brush finish on the bracelet and the case on the Submariner as well. For me, I don't really like shiny watches, but I think this is really nice because it's subtle in the fact it's steel and platinum. So it's not loud and gold and super shiny. So for me, I prefer to go with a more subtle watch like this one. I love the blue on the dial. I love this rhodium dial. For me, this is the one of all the Yachtmasters, including the Yachtmaster 2, that I would own. I like that it's slightly smaller profile than the Submariner. It looks more luxurious and has kind of a bit more of an elegant touch to it, rather than basically just a tool watch that the Submariner is. Let us know in the comments what you like about this watch. What would you have, this or the Submariner? Which of the Yachtmasters would you own? Would you own the Yachtmaster 2 or the Yachtmaster 1? Stay tuned for more watch reviews. There'll be more coming soon. And we've got some jewellery coming soon as well for you guys.